and very pleased to have with me in the studio Brian Carome. Am I saying it right, Brian?
That's right, Tom. Thanks.
Carome, who's the executive director of Street Sense here in Washington, D.C. StreetSense.org is the website. Is that for D.C.'s?
That's for DC Street Newspaper and Media Company.
Great. So tell us about Street Sense, Brian.
So we've been around for a little over 12 years now. We began as a traditional street newspaper, which is a model that began in New York City in the mid-'80s, which provides economic opportunities to persons who are experiencing homelessness by both writing for and selling a newspaper that we produce here in Washington, D.C.
Whenever I walk by a Street Sense vendor, I buy one. I mean, it's just, and I've had so many of them. And then I carry it along because, you know, I'll encounter two or three others and they see it and so they don't say anything. But I've had so many of the Street Sense vendors say to me, look on page 7, look on page 9. I wrote that article. I mean, these people are really involved with this.
And they're proud of the work that they're doing. And it's a chance for them to get back in the economy. It's a chance for them to begin to reestablish a sense of community that is really supportive and helps propel them forward in their lives.
So when somebody comes to you or is referred to you, and tell me how it happens, and they're homeless and, you know, down and out, they got no options, life has gone to hell. First of all, what kind of screening process do you have for who can become a Street Sense vendor? And secondly, what do they get out of it?
Sure. If someone's coming to us, it's because they found themselves unemployable. And if you're living in a shelter, if you're living outside in this community, you are about as alone and on your own as you can get. And we take you at your word when you come in and say, I'm homeless, I'm looking for some work. You've got to be sober. And that's really the only screening we do. And we consider ourselves a no-barrier employment opportunity.
Do they have to be continuously sober or just sober while they're on the job?
They're going to be sober while they're on the job. And we meet people in some cases that are in the very early stage of recovery from substance abuse. But if you're coming to Street Sense, you're demonstrating that you want to work hard, because standing out on a street corner for even an hour a day, or certainly for 4 or 5 or 6 hours a day, is very hard work, because you're taking 99 no's for every one yes that you get. So it's hard work.
Yeah,
it's hard work.
Yeah. Well, when I was 17 in San Francisco, I panhandled for a living, but that was a whole different time and different era, and it was it wasn't, it literally wasn't, I won't survive if I don't make this money. I mean, you know, but for these folks, this is real stuff. I mean,
for most of them, this is the only income that they have, and it's a chance for them to find their way back into the economy.
So you're doing a Street Sense Celebrity Vendor Week. That's this week, and I will be along with one of the homeless folks who works with Street Sense, selling Street Sense newspapers. We will be outside the Metro stop, the McPherson Square Metro stop. It's right across the street from the park. It's at the corner of 14th and I Northwest here in Washington, D.C. And I'll be there from 3:30 to 4:30 day after tomorrow. So if you are in the Washington, D.C. area and you want to come by and buy a newspaper from me, they're $2. Right?
They're $2.
Although you can give 5 or 10 or 20 or whatever you like.
We'll take it.
Yeah, anything. And it should be a lot of fun. I'm really looking forward to it. Tell me some of the stories of some of the people that have been meaningful to you who have come through Street Sense.
Sure. We had a woman named Sasha, a woman in her late 20s, who came into the office about a year and a half ago with her then 18-month-old daughter. And Sasha had been couch surfing for a while. She was a victim of rape. She was recovering from post-traumatic stress disorder and struggling with depression. And we put her to work that day selling the newspaper after some training. But she soon lost that place, the place that she lived. She was living with some friends. And she found herself on the verge of sleeping outside. And we intervened on her behalf and found her a way into the family shelter system here in D.C. And she turned around and did a 30-minute film about her experience living in that shelter, that awful shelter over at the grounds of the former D.C. General Hospital. And it was viewed by 250 people at a sold-out theater in last August. And that type of work, writing, she also writes for the paper. She participates in our theater project. It really sort of boosted her sense of herself. She grew to a greater understanding of herself, and she's begun to think about what she wants to do with the rest of life. She's now got a permanent place to live through case management services that we helped introduce her to, and she's really moving forward in her life now.
That's remarkable. There was a Street Sense vendor who is often down at the corner of 14th and G, I think, or in that neighborhood, who can't speak. he kind of mumbles is the wrong word. He's clearly trying to speak. Or maybe he can, and I'm just not able to understand him. Do you know who I'm talking about?
I do.
Seems like a really nice guy. I always buy a paper from him when I walk by.
And he's doing his best to contribute.
What's his story?
His story is his disabilities, as you can imagine, have left him unemployable, left him without any options, and he found himself homeless. And through us, he's trying to work his way back. And there's 130 folks who are out there selling the paper every day,
right.
And these are folks who are willing to do the hard work it takes to work themselves out of their situation into a better place.
Yeah, and it's an absolutely marvelous thing I've supported ever since I've lived here in Washington D.C. It's one of the big challenges that I had when I first moved here, because there's so much poverty in this town, there's so much homelessness in this town, which is an international embarrassment. That it's like, okay, who do you give to and who do you not? And is even something like, well, he's probably just going to take the money and buy a bottle of beer. Is that kind of value judgment? I mean, who the hell am I to make that kind of a value judgment, right?
Yeah, I mean, I know what I did with some of my parents' money when I was in college, and some of the money I earned when I was in college, and I made some bad choices. We've all made bad choices in our lives. Yeah. I know that, I've experienced unemployment in my life, but I had a safety net to help take care of me and see my way through. Not everyone has that safety net.
Well, and you and I both have the benefit of white privilege. I've never seen a white street sense vendor. And maybe that just reflects the racial makeup of this city. But it seems most all of them are African American.
Predominantly, but not all. But certainly predominantly. And in this city, that's the face of poverty in this city, certainly.
Yeah, and thus the tragedy. This is just an extraordinary thing, and it's a wonderful thing that you're doing. We're talking with Brian Carome. He is the executive director of Street Sense here in Washington, D.C. The website is streetsense.org, and you can tweet him at StreetSenseDC, SENSEDC. And this is a great model, and I would love to see it expanded. But B, it's a model for which we should not have a need.
Absolutely. I tell folks, Tom, who work for me, our job is to put the organization out of business. I mean, we're in the business of seeing an end to chronic homelessness in this city.
Right.
And it's a crime that in a city in a nation of such enormous wealth that we have people who live outside, many of whom have chronic health conditions, which contributes significantly. Many of them who grew up in cities and towns whose public education systems did not do the job that they ought to have done to educate them well and to give them a chance in the economy that we live in.
Right. Well, we're seeing the at least here in D.C. I think with a lot of these folks, we're seeing the direct consequence of this kind of whole white supremacy system that has been built, and the structural, endemic, multi-century poverty that has come out of it. And that's damn hard to climb out of. These folks say, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps. How about some bootstraps?
Sure.
So when
you can be working 2 full-time jobs. You can be working almost 3 full-time jobs at a minimum wage in the city and not be able to afford a place to live in the city. Right.
So when somebody, if I buy a Street Sense newspaper for $2, how much does the vendor?
$1.50 of that goes directly to the vendor,
and 50 cents comes back to the organization to continue the work that you're doing and to pay for the publication of the newspaper. And the paper is entirely written by vendors.
About half of each issue is written by vendors.
Yeah, because they are so proud, and some of them. There was one woman I bought. This was maybe 2 years ago. She said, my story's on the last page, or the inside of the last page. And I found myself in tears reading this woman's story. I mean, it was just so brilliantly written, and it was a marvelous thing. You're doing God's work. Brian Carome, he's the executive director. I will be selling Street Sense Wednesday at the corner of 14th and I. Hang on.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
That's the McPherson Square, right outside the McPherson Square metro station here in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday, 3:30 to 4:30 of this week. So drop by if you can. To watch more clips from our programs, hit the Watch More Videos button over here. And please be sure to hit the handy-dandy subscribe button so you'll always be up to date. Tag, you're it.